welcome to the UK Column News. It is the 5th of November 2014 and it's just gone 1 o'clock. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Garish and Nick are here in Plymouth. Been a bit of a rubbish day.
Well, it's not a bad day.
Better than yesterday.
Not bad. Well, I mean, the visibility is quite good here in Plymouth, and I understand there are some fireworks that will be let off from the Hoe, so that might be interesting. A lot of people saying, well, Guy Fawkes, not a bad man. What do they mean? I think what they mean is it's a pity.
Number one truther, number first.
Obviously a domestic terrorist. It wouldn't be permitted these days, but there we go. So, putting a bang under Parliament, we'll come to that at the end of the news show today. And we have to say bye-bye to Malcolm Massey, who we understand is off on travels around the world to sunnier climes for a bit of a break and to discover what's happening, I think.
I know, going to miss your fuzz.
So
he'll just eat his way through each country, I think, as he goes.
He's probably going to come back fitter and fatter. Okay.
Can I just say to Lordy in the chat room, Riverford or Green Life for organic, decent home delivery food?
I think that might have been a television-like advert there.
Was it? Yeah, oh God, yes.
There we are.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, we're just going to start off by giving Robert Greene and what happens to you. Well, you end up in prison, and you end up effectively imprisoned in your own house. And we've got another part of the news today, which is talking about a particular paedophile who has been arrested. This subject has not gone away by any means, but how incredible that a man that risks his professional life, his family life, to stand up for abused children simply gets dragged through the courts and the prison system. Well, what's happening in America?
Okay, so yesterday in depth, and maybe Patrick will be on next week as well with his thoughts.
Yes, getting quite interesting. So it'd be good to have Mark Anderson back with us and some more in-depth news from America. But we've got big things happening in London
tonight. Yeah, so 5th of November. Tonight about just what's going to go on, and your masks may possibly be allowed to be removed by police.
Okay, we understand that there are some sound problems at the moment. We will say that it won't be apparent to viewers, but we have got quite a substantial, have completed quite a substantial upgrade here in the studio, which helps us a lot. So it may be that we actually have some problems. What's your verdict, Nick? Shall we keep going? But So if the problem is the sound cuts out while the slides are on screen, I think what we'll do is we'll just keep the slides up for a relatively short period, and then we'll cut back to us to talk.
Okay, they're saying it could mute beyond the slides. So when the slides come up, could the mute button be hit? So.
Okay.
Oh.
Right, we
Someone's
might
just
have some
crawling into the room.
technical assistance.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, the slide that we've just shown you is part of the ongoing debate now over money for the EU. And we've got this, of course, very emotive story hitting the headlines that the EU's come up out of nowhere and demanded £1.7 billion from the United Kingdom. The slide there was showing in the Daily Mail that they're picking up on the fact that, of course, it's only the UK that is paying this, expected to pay this enormous amount, and many other countries are going to be picking up that money. But what we wanted to say is, let us remember former EU Commissioner Neil Kinnock, because this is the man who was in post at the time when it was obvious that there was massive fraud and corruption within the European Union, and the EU has still not produced a full set of signed audited accounts in 18 years. So if we just jump back, this is an article from The Telegraph in 2002, and it's saying that he's been questioned by MEPs about an alleged cover-up of mismanagement and cronyism by the EU statistics body Eurostat. And one of the officials from Eurostat, Dort Schmidt-Brown, a whistleblowing employee, has had to take sick leave and says she feels intimidated. Well, of course, this was the pattern of events. However, for the Kinnocks themselves, they've picked up millions of pounds of money on a gravy train ride from the EU. So if we have a look in a different direction here, here's a headline back in August 2002. Commission Vice President Neil Kinnock admits he cannot stop fraud. And it says in an interview in the broadcast, Commissioner Kinnock said, because there is fraud going on within the EU cannot castigate applicant members about EU finance-related fraud. So the simple question is that if we have known for many years, 18, 19 years, that the EU is a totally corrupt and fraudulent organisation, why is Mr. David Cameron and previous Prime Ministers putting taxpayers' money into a criminal organisation? This can only be malfeasance in public office, which means that David Cameron and his cronies should be brought to trial pretty quickly. So huge amounts of money. We can't feed people in this country, but we're calmly handing away billions, not just to the European Union, but to a totally corrupt EU.
Indeed.
Amazing, isn't it?
Is there any chance, they're asking the chairman, can we go back to the anonymous story that nobody heard? People want the information on that. Are you able to jump the slides back, or shall I just read the story?
I can do that. Let's see whether we can do that.
There you go, well done.
You wouldn't get this service from the BBC, of course.
Okay, to recap, 5th of November, time for the Million Mask March. It's going to descend on London tonight. Anonymous Facebook page is predicting over 6,000 will attend this year. Last year, 2,500 attended. RT are reporting that Met Police are wanting to engage with Anonymous so they can work together to ensure crowd safety. And the Standard article I'm about to show now is reporting hundreds of riot police are actually on standby, and Scotland Yard have issued a public appeal also to Anonymous to work alongside them, but had no response. And just a heads up to any viewers and listeners who are going along tonight, apparently the police can now apply for powers to remove people's masks. So just be aware of that. And also, according to this Standard article, water cannon is available to deal with protesters, but it's just awaiting the Home Office approval. So just keep safe out there tonight. It's going to be cold as well, I think. So just so you know, they can take your masks off, and if people get too naughty, they might introduce the big gun water cannon.
We should remember, of course, the masks are all part of the fright of the government because their facial recognition software doesn't work. And they're desperate that each and every one of us, of course, can be recognised on camera. And we'll be coming on to that later in the news today. Yep. So this is a very sad story. Really this is the reality of life, isn't it?
Yeah, yesterday saw, oh no, that's yesterday. Okay, a story from Fort Lauderdale in Florida. A 90-year-old man is looking at 60 days in jail for feeding the poor. A new law that's out in Fort Lauderdale bans people from sharing meals with the public. The gentleman pictured here is called Arnold Abbott, and he was arrested and charged and is facing a $500 fine and up to 60 days in jail. Mr. Abbott has spoken out about his ordeal, saying one of the officers came over and screamed at him, "Drop that plate right now," and then threatened to arrest him for going to a church and helping the poor. So this is what is going on in. I mean, it's happening now in America. We know about people getting prosecuted in this country for going through bins to get food. So this is going to be the next thing to happen in this country. If people are stopped to help the poor, they could end up being arrested and fined.
I think that's right. We know that many of the soup kitchens that have been run over many years in cities for people in trouble, druggies, people sleeping rough on the streets, those soup kitchens have been forced to close and move on.
Yep.
So that article from America, but it's coming here. Now this is another example of what's being planned from the Daily Mail. An interesting story. Encourage you to go and read it yourselves. Captive audience, middle-aged couple from Somerset spend the past 6 years writing to US death row inmates. And a bit more of the text. I hope you can read that. And it says, devout Christians, Linda and John married in 1983 after a mutual friend set them up on a blind date. They soon realised they had a passion for helping the disadvantaged, which Linda accredits to a difficult childhood. And then they saw an advert saying, were there any people who'd write to people on death row? And they've now got built up friendships with at least 10 inmates. Now, I find this an extremely interesting article. Let's underline a little bit of the headline, because the sub-headline here says, people think it's strange what they do, but it's a way to help people. I think this is carefully constructed reporting because what it's actually doing is branding compassion as strange. So this is not everybody's cup of tea to be writing to somebody who's in prison on death row. Does it mean that because they're on death row, all compassion is finished? Yeah. But this is a very carefully crafted article. Use that word deliberately. In my opinion, these are devout Christians. They're a bit strange because they write to people on death row. Let us know what you think on that one, because it's quite an emotive little article. Meanwhile, British troops are now overseas in Sierra Leone. They've been taken down there on RFA Argus, and the BBC in particular, lots of pictures all about Ebola and the military. And here they are with a little embedded image of Royal Marines launching their rubber boats with help from grateful members of the local community in Sierra Leone. And of course, the BBC was also reporting on the fact that RFA Argus had actually arrived alongside in Sierra Leone, and this is giving rise to hope. So our question really is just what are the troops and the rubber boats and the vehicles and the helicopters going to do? Yeah. So we've got a tiny squad of men down there, no disrespect to the armed forces. They've done what they were told. They've got the equipment and the men and women down there. But what are they actually going to do on the ground? Is there a threat? Well, in that area, we think so. This was flagged up to us that basically PAX, which is one of the companies that provides insurance for military people, Army, Navy and Air Force, are saying that basically you've got to have optional life extension if you're going to be involved with Ebola. We'd like people to check this out very carefully, because this was a very short message sent to us earlier this morning. But it is quite interesting. So we've got British troops being put into what the mainstream press are saying is a very dangerous environment from Ebola. But while you're down there, you better pay a bit more on your insurance because the government isn't going to cover you. Well done, David Cameron. But you've got more on the
I've got no more on this.
background to Ebola.
Exactly. Independent here have published a map of Africa that was produced by a gentleman called Anthony England. Here it shows on the map, we can just bring the map up, that Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia being heavily affected by Ebola, but the rest of Africa has no Ebola. Completely none. Neither is Kenya. He shows that he's from the Netherlands, this guy, and he picked up on this story after a nun ended up being, I think, arrested because she was working in Kenya and there wasn't any Ebola in there, and she was playing it down, saying it's a fear-mongering factor. But here it clearly says, and apparently this is accurate, that there is no Ebola in the whole entire west part of Africa other than those 3 countries. So we're having this fear-mongering done.
Well, Ebola,
where's the fear coming out of Africa?
Yeah, Ebola, where it exists, is a very dangerous thing.
Absolutely.
We know that.
Yep.
But we're being told more or less that it's breaking out everywhere. America,
Absolutely.
Britain.
Yeah.
So this is largely the BBC, and the Independent is putting out a map like that.
Yeah. And there's not even one reported suspected case has gone on in Kenya.
Okay, well, we wait to see what happens with that. I believe that British military have been told that if they contract Ebola while they're doing the mission, that they're going to stay in local hospitals. They won't be brought back to UK. This seems interesting because I always understood that RFA Argus, for example, had superb medical facilities on board, fully equipped wards, operating theatres. But we understand that British troops who contract Ebola will actually be left in the local area. If that's true, that's a very interesting state of affairs. We'll see if we can dig up some more information on that one.
I mean, what amazed me is that this is coming out in the Independent, that they've actually put out this map. I saw it circulating on Facebook a few days ago, but for it to now appear in the Independent, it's quite something.
Mainstream journalists beginning to think for themselves,
No,
possibly.
I doubt it, maybe.
Well, of course, the military have got more jobs to do, so the smaller they get, the more David Cameron cuts them back, the more work there is to do. So the Express here saying, oh, British troops are going to be heading back to Iraq to help fight against the Islamic State. This article is mainly talking about a training role, but nevertheless, what we see is a never-ending cycle of wars, violence. British government gets in there, destabilises, starts the trouble, military got to go in, casualties come out, and I'm just going to say a story that we must cover, I haven't forgotten about it, is the connection between the Poppy appeal and limbs being brought into the country.
Oh, really?
We'll talk about that horrific story. But I'm just going to bring this up on screen. The war is not meant to be won. It's meant to be continuous. Hierarchical society is only possible on the basis of poverty and ignorance. This new version is the past, and no different past can ever have existed. In principle, the war effort is always planned to keep society on the brink of starvation. The war is waged by the ruling group against its own subjects, and its objects is not the victory over either Eurasia or East Asia, but to keep the very structure of society intact. And that, of course, was George Orwell, but it does seem remarkable that what's happening in the world today, particularly driven through the corrupt British government in Westminster, war, continuous war and violence overseas. Dangerous, very dangerous. Well, probably...
Here she is.
Here she is,
Little beauty.
the lady of the night, probably. So the Telegraph here saying that Theresa May has been turning her fire on the Culture Secretary. And what is all this about? Well, it's to do with mobile phones and the fact that it's been put forward that we shouldn't have so many holes in the coverage over UK. We should have continuous mobile phone cover. We should be able to share networks. But Theresa May's really got her knickers in a twist about this, as Sajid Javid announced government plans to eliminate mobile phone black spots across Britain. A leaked memo revealed that the Home Secretary was calling for further studies to show that the plans do not prevent accessing information that's crucial to keeping us safe. Now, that's a very interesting, twisted statement, because really she's creating a big fuss. In a letter to the Prime Minister and other senior cabinet members seen by the Times, she warned that the plans, which include forcing mobile phone operators to allow their customers to switch to rival signals if they lose their own, could have a detrimental effect on law enforcement, security and intelligence agency access to communications data and lawful intercept. So she's panicking that this could actually mean they can't really track us. And then in this paragraph, we'll just highlight a couple of bits. A letter said that two of the proposed options, including national roaming, could have a detrimental impact on law enforcement, right, and lawful intercepts. And then she says, allowing companies such as Tesco to offer customers packages that use all four of the main networks, that's also a big problem. So let's bear in mind that this comes after we've just had Robert Hannigan, boss of GCHQ, squealing that he needs the support of American high-tech firms if GCHQ is going to keep us safe from ISIS, keep us safe from all of these terrorists that we're constantly bombarded with. He needs access through the big American networks, and now there's these people getting worried because, oh dear, somebody's interfering with how we receive our mobile phone signals. But let's also remember this. Of course, Theresa May's also built up this amazing surveillance system on the ground. So she's using the police, she's using local authorities, she's using mental health teams, MAPA, FTAC. This is a massive surveillance system that's being built here in UK. Puts anything in.
How much is it all worth, this big surveillance system? Do we know the
billions and billions of pounds? And it's now getting to the dangerous phase, of course. And if we come back to that protest in London, they need to see the faces because they want to be scanning and stripping the facial images off all the cameras. So if Theresa May is working with the police, let's remind ourselves of this lady, Professor Shirley Pearce. She's the independent chair of the College of Policing. And let's see what that lady said. She said, to achieve our ambition, we will extend our networks beyond the traditional boundaries of policing to include the public, further and higher education, private sector, charitable organisations, and the wider public sector, and make the most of all opportunities to work with others to support policing. So this woman is saying that everybody is going to be drawn into the police spy network, right? And we said very clearly, but we're going to say it again, who is this woman? Well, if we have a look at her, you can simply Google her on through Wiki, and this woman is a psychologist. She has no policing experience. Her whole background is to do with health policy and psychology, and yet this woman is telling us that the police are going to put their tentacles into every part of society. So we're saying psychologists with no policing experience heading the creation of police role and policy, stupid, dangerous, or what? Isn't it obvious what's being built here?
I think so.
Well,
it should be.
It should be. So let's come in on a bit more detail of what else is going on. We'll put these two ladies together. So Theresa May, she of course is one of the driving figures in the background. We can then bring Professor Shirley Pearce alongside her, and what have they got between them? A very detailed network of police surveillance. But of course, we now know that we've got the GCHQ hub there, linked through to BBC monitoring, for example. They've got all their listening posts. We know that political charity Common Purpose are in there. We've had links through, of course, to the to the Foreign Secretary and to the Parliamentary Intelligence and Security Committee. So this is a vast network, largely spying on the British public. So here's the higher links, people like Rifkin, but we've got Secret Intelligence Service, GCHQ, MI5, and people like Rory Stewart, Bilderberger, come out of nowhere, but now with influence over the so-called security of this country. This is a phenomenal network. When we just add all of these people and the links, and step by step, the LibLab Con is building the most comprehensive and dangerous British state spying system the world has ever seen. I think these people are beginning to get panicky because they know that the system's being unravelled.
Can I just, we can start on the next story. Apparently Livestream have lost pictures, apparently. So apologies about that, and we'll look into it for tomorrow. Don't know why that's happened, but it's just come up. Yeah, people are not happy that they've got no pictures. So sorry, Livestream viewers. You can go on to ukcolumn.org/live to see the pictures.
Okay. Well, having just explained a few £billion worth of state surveillance, it's very interesting that when it comes to catching common criminals, we have to rely on the power of the Canadian police force. And the Mail here reporting that this paedophile, Andrew Foulds, was picked up in Canada as a result of some video footage of him raping a 13-year-old girl with severe learning difficulties. Now, there's some really significant factors in this case because, of course, here we are seeing that children with severe learning difficulties are prized by paedophiles because they make unreliable witnesses. So children with these sorts of difficulties, extremely vulnerable. Holly Gregg, classic case. What was the paper talking about? Well, it says that Andrew Foulds from Greenford, West London, was sentenced at Harrow Crown Court after police investigators found the video footage as well as hundreds of indecent images of children on his mobile phone and laptop. But look what he'd been doing. The 40-year-old had previously worked as a learning mentor for the Ealing Tuition Service in Southall, as a youth worker at Brentford FC Community Sports Trust, and for Ealing Council's Play Service. So this man right in amongst the social services sector, and he's picking up children with severe learning difficulties, but it takes the Canadian police to find this man. So the British police at the moment are unable to track down paedophiles through Elm Guesthouse. They can't track them down in Nottingham.
But they're going to have all these, it's turning into a police state.
It's turning into a police, unless you're a paedophile.
Unless you're a paedophile and you can't be found and traced.
Well, you can't be found, and you can't be found if you're a member of Parliament who's involved with this. Even though the members of Parliament are supposed to be watched, security vetted, and their actions known because it's a security issue. So there's a big lie going on here, and of course they can't investigate the paedophiles because the trail for these vast paedophile rings leads straight back to the British government. And of course government policy is affecting what happens anyway.
Okay, so there's a website called Brook who provide teachers, professionals and the public with sex advice for under 25s. They also provide sexual health booklets to schools, and they believe that sex between 13-year-olds is absolutely normal and say sexual behaviour in 9-year-olds is okay. Now, this booklet, I think we can just go on, has like a traffic light system, green, amber and red, and these give guidelines, and these booklets have been sent out to every school in the country. The advice also describes masturbation and consensual kissing as green behaviour for children at the age of 9. Again, this traffic light system being used is preliminary for sexual behaviour for different age groups. And what they say here, for 13 to 70-year-olds, green light behaviour includes having a sexual relationships, oral or penetrative sex with somebody of the same or opposite gender. So I had a little look in to who was behind Brooke. This is one of the gentlemen who come up. His name is Simon Blake, and he writes for the Huffington Post. He set up Compact Voice, which is a tool for people to liaise with government and charities and voluntary services on how to get the best deals. He also set up diversity role models. Again, this is for people with confused about sexual orientation, gay, to go to have a voice and look for advice. And he also is one of the chairmen of Brooke, who are organising, sending out all these leaflets to children.
And we've got the National Children's Bureau in there as well.
Yeah, we do. We have them all in there. So this guy, again, he looks quite young. He's been involved in many, many things. And he is also an OBE, which was very interesting.
And people are commenting, this will screw our children up. That's the language they're using. Well, of course, because this is what it is designed to do. And the earlier that this sort of material can be put into the heads of school children, the greater the effect, which is why the government is consistently going for a lower and lower age to bring in this.
But then we had that EU, was it an EU or a UN document saying that masturbation was okay, but should we talk to 5-year-olds?
Indeed.
Yeah. But can I just say, the Family Education Trust, which are part of the government, the Family Education Trust has urged the government to distance themselves from the advice coming out of Brooke. But I'd say it's probably already too late if those booklets have been distributed to most schools. Yeah. And they're being given in this PSHE classes, PSHE classes that now are mandatory, private company, go into schools giving talks to children as young as 8 on their personal sexual health education.
Yeah, sick stuff coming straight out of David Cameron's Conservative government, and of course Michael Gove at the forefront, all of this thing coming through. Remember also, big society sitting there in the background. Big society hasn't disappeared, it's growing all the time. And the aim of big society is basically to completely break down family life so that the state can claim each individual. It's a blatant attack. But this is a pretty incredible story as well.
Indeed. An article from Monday in The Independent is reporting that according to a charity called Mossack, M-O-S-A-C, paedophiles are grooming their partners to have children as a fast-track way to gain access to victims. According to The Independent, Mossack have been lobbying the government to seal a legal loophole which allows parents who have abused their children to be consulted over certain aspects of the child's life. Mossack want a complete change in parental responsibility laws. Now, Mossack I had a look at. If you can just bring the little slide up. Here is Mossack. And they say about themselves, they say they receive no government funding and rely on donations and grants, and they're currently looking for a treasurer. Apparently it was set up by 4 mums whose children had been abused. And it all looked very, very nice until I came up with this. And this is who they are receiving their grants off. London Council's Children in Need, the Kelly Family Charitable Trust, don't know too much about them, but Lloyd's TSB Foundation and lottery funding.
So we got a tiny charity that suddenly is getting tremendous support from very big organisations that we track around. So we're not too sure what's happening. And as we always say, if anybody can help us with what we're looking at, but is this genuinely supporting children in the country, or are these people being used? Is that what's happening by big lottery? We're not sure. Yeah. Well, we also saw this one here.
We didn't actually see this. I got it from Michael Doherty. Doherty, Just Law, has set up a petition, demand members of the public are included on the child abuse investigation panel. I say Mr. Brian Garish or Bill Maloney should, or both, even better, should be on that panel, and maybe even Robert Green. If anyone wants to sign that petition to get Theresa May to bring members of the public in, it's on change.org.
I don't think she's going to do that. I think Theresa May has got to ensure that the so-called inquiry into child abuse is kept dragging on for years because you take the lid off child abuse in Britain and it is going to lead you straight to people at the top of the tree, so that's into Westminster and the establishment in general. There is no doubt that senior members of the police, the judiciary, armed forces even are involved with this sort of stuff, and there's desperation now to stop the truth coming out. Well, we know that we often cover a lot of very dark subjects. I don't really want to finish on this particular one because we're getting underground in Westminster, and essentially the Mail here is saying that a fatberg, as long as a bendy bus, is having to be cleared from the sewers under Whitehall, and experts are saying that it's wet wipes which are to blame for clogging up the pipes. But as always, the UK column can bring the real truth, because we understand that the fatberg under Whitehall has now been identified as the missing MP, Eric Pickles, but we understand that he's going to be cleared fairly shortly, and that should, of course, free up the sewers. Okay, well, maybe you see Guy Fawkes down there, possibly.
I had to do anything because I had to just bite my bottom lip because I get kicked under the table because I laugh too much.
Yeah, so it's possible, isn't it? Eric Pickles floating around the sewers under Whitehall, and he gently bounces into a few barrels of gunpowder.
He could be down there with the Belgium Minister for Health.
Okay, enough. Okay. No more. No more.
Can I just say we have bumper stickers, leaflets, and Bradbury T-shirts, amongst others, all on the website, and or email Carol, CAROLE at ukcolumn.org for T-shirts, leaflets, and bumper stickers if anyone is.
Okay, and I will say that both Mike Robinson and Nick Green put a huge amount of effort into the update that's gone on in our studio. That has involved new software and technology, I think is the okay word. And we can only do this with your help. So, again, a very big thank you for people who've sent in donations or taking subscriptions with us. It's only with your support that we can do what we can do.
Yeah, because we ain't going to get no government grants, are we?
I think it's unlikely, and our budget is a little bit less than the 3.6 billion that the BBC operates on.
And that goes for people who are, who do have problems with the streaming. We can only do so much, and as Brian just said, it's only by people who are supporting, sending in donations, and getting people to subscribe to get the paper and everything else that we can continue doing that. So apologies about any streaming problems we do have, but we only have limited resources.
There we are. So thanks very much for joining us. If you have any friends, please let them know that we're live and get the message out there. Dictatorship building in UK very fast, and it's becoming apparent to people overseas in countries which traditionally have had problems in that way themselves. So interesting times. Thanks for joining us.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.